Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. The big news, of course, this week was Fender unveiling a brand new guitar line. It's made in Mexico and it's called the Player Plus. So today we're going to talk about, well, the big question, is it a worthy upgrade over the standard player? That's a big question. It's $200 more, which puts it right up about $1,000 US. That's a pretty big price tag. So we'll talk about the competition in that price range now that it's kind of up at about $1,000. And we'll talk about the features and what makes it different from the player series. So here we go. Let's jump in and check out the differences. Now, first things first, I gotta say, well, there's nothing new under the sun. This has all happened before. So even though Fender's announcing a new Player Plus series, well, they have a substantial history of taking their Mexican-made guitars and kind of souping them up. Do you guys remember the Deluxe Player? That came out in 2005, ran for about a decade. It had upgraded hardware, gold hardware, 12-inch radius, noiseless pickups, upgraded tuning machines, and upgraded finishes with fancy translucent finishes. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, it's the Player Plus. After the Deluxe Player came the Deluxe Roadhouse. Well, it had locking tuners, it had 12-inch radius, it had noiseless pickups, upgraded in almost every way, including a contoured heel joint on that model, which you don't get with the Player Plus. But does that sound familiar? Yeah, of course, it's the Player Plus. So Fender has a long history of taking these guitars and souping them up, but they've discontinued, of course, the Deluxe Player and the Roadhouse, and it's kind of brought together into, the overarching umbrella of the Player Plus. With that brief history out of the way, let's talk about the tangible differences between the regular Player series, which is what I have here, versus the Player Plus. So we're going to look at every area on this guitar that has been, upgraded or changed on the Player Plus, and then of course we'll talk about, well, is it worth it? Now on the headstock, there's actually quite a few differences between the two models. On the standard Player here, you just get regular Fender tuning machines. On the Player Plus, you get Fender lockers from the factory. That's fantastic. You love to see it. Now, of course, anybody with $50 and 15 minutes can upgrade their standard Player with locking tuners, no modifications needed. So that needs to be said. But on the Player Plus, it's great to see it from the factory. Number two, well, the string trees have changed. Here's just the standard. You can see it right here. And on the Player Plus, you get a Fender USA string tree. That's a nice little visual upgrade. I don't think there's really any difference in performance, but it looks pretty cool. So that's awesome. And most notably, you also get a change in the logo. So here you just get the classic, Fender spaghetti logo. I think it looks fantastic. On the Player Plus, you sort of get that shinier, cleaner looking logo. So if that's important to you, that is a change on the model. Unfortunately, the nuts are the same, synthetic bone, which is a fancy way of saying plastic. So on the Player Plus, it would have been nice to go to bone like the American ones, but it's the same plastic nut on both models. Now, as for the neck, there's two notable differences. Number one, the Player Plus has a flatter fingerboard radius. It's a 12-inch radius, as we talked about with the Deluxe Player and the Deluxe Roadhouse. Just a more modern feeling for soloing and big bends, that kind of thing. On the regular Player series here, it's a 9.5, which you find on most Fenders. It's kind of a nice compromise between 7.25, which is the vintage radius, and the 12, which is a more modern. So this is what you'll find on most Fenders, but the Player Plus has a flatter, more modern fingerboard. The other thing is on the Player Plus, they've rolled the fingerboard edges. I talk about this lots on guitars and on my videos because I like fingerboard edges rolled. It just gives it a nice worn-in feel. So super pumped to have that on the Player Plus. That's a great feature. It takes a little bit more time, so great upgrade in my estimation. Here on the regular Player, you can see it's quite flat. That edge from where the back of the neck profile kind of transitions into the front of the fingerboard, it's kind of just a sharp edge. Now, as I've showed you guys on multiple videos, that's really easy to change to with just a little sandpaper and stuff. So I'll probably do that on this guitar, but it's nice to have that from the factory. Now, at this point, I gotta mention the heel joints. The heel joint on the Player Plus is identical to the Player. This is a big miss from Fender, considering the Deluxe Roadhouse, which was the model that's outgoing, had the contoured heel joint. So it was the same price. The Deluxe Roadhouse had all the same features as the Player Plus, only it also had the contoured heel joint. which just helps you play in the upper registers. It's a really nice feature. And on a modern guitar, you know, we're talking about locking tuners, 12-inch radius, all that stuff, right? It should have the contoured heel joint. Why Fender removed that feature and went with the straight block, I will never know, but that is a big miss. Now the next big difference is of course the pickups. The Player Plus comes with noiseless pickups, the regular player has Alnico pickups. Now my recommendation is if you're playing dodgy clubs, if you're playing with lots of gain, just go noiseless. It takes the stress out of the whole situation. No hums, no buzz, no pops, you know, all of that's eliminated and you can just focus on the music. If you're not in that situation and you want more of a true classical, you know, Fender tone, well, go with the regular pickups. They're not going to sound the same as the noiseless. That's what I always say. They shouldn't be compared. They're a totally different thing. And that's okay. You know, noiseless pickups don't have to be like vintage single coils. That's, you know, I don't know why they always get compared because they're totally different. Now, as for the trem systems, they're pretty much identical. The main difference being the Player Plus has block saddles, and here on the regular player, you can see they're bent steel saddles. It would have been a really nice welcome feature, especially since they took away the contoured heel joint, if they gave us a pop-in bar, but it's the same thing. You have to kind of screw it in and screw it out. So the trem system itself works really well, the 2-point trem, but yeah, just a shame that you have to still kind of thread the bar in and thread it out. And finally, the last notable difference in terms of features is on the Player Plus, you have a push-pull pot here that engages the neck pickup. That means if you're in your bridge and you pull out this pot, well, you can have these two pickups on at the same time. If you're in position 2 and you pull out the pot, you get all 3 pickups at the same time. That's pretty nice. That's a great feature. And it does remind me a little bit of that Deluxe Roadhouse again. It had the S1 switching. So nice to see that still on the Plus version. Now, I do like Fender's implementation where you just kind of push in on a pot. They had the little button built within your volume knob or your tone knob. Here it's a push-pull. So a little bit more annoying to kind of get your fingers under that Fender knob to pull it out. It was much easier just to kind of like tap the center and have it engage. So that might be a little bit of a downgrade, but still awesome to have the feature where you can just pop your neck pickup in wherever you are. Now, as for differences that are not feature-based, well, you get a bunch of new finishes, including 2 gradient finishes, which I don't think we've seen on a Fender before, which is kind of fun. So if you like those finishes, you'll probably be pumped about that. Myself, I don't think I'm going to be trading in my Cherry Burst. I love this finish, but it's nice to have some other options. So the big question is the Strat Plus worth the extra $200 upcharge over the base model? And this is a little bit of a tricky question because I think it does hinge on the pickups. So let's just ignore those for a second. And I think overall, yes. I love the electronics upgrade to add the neck pickup wherever you are. Love the rolled fingerboard edges, the 12-inch radius, the locking tuners. All of that's really compelling to me. Block saddles versus bent steel, don't really care. You know, string trees, don't care, all that stuff. But, you know, the playability things and the electronics upgrades, really compelling. So I think they did a good job there. Negatives, of course, is that heel joint and no real trem upgrades. But overall, I think it's a pretty compelling package. Now, when we come back to the pickups, well, I kind of wish they would offer the Strat Plus with conventional pickups. That would be the ultimate. Let the player choice. If you need the noiseless, go noiseless. If you want regular pickups, go regular. I think that would be the ultimate solution. But that being said, yeah, overall, I think it's a really nice package. Now, to muddy the water even further, let's talk about some of Fender's competition to the Player Plus series. Number 1, well, you've seen it on the channel. This is the Music Man Sterling Cutlass, roasted maple neck, locking tuners, contoured heel joint, really nice, great sounding pickups, better trem system in my opinion, super lightweight, $500, half the price of the Player Plus. Here's another option. This one, again, you've seen on the channel. This is the Yamaha 612, locking tuners, Seymour Duncan pickups, Wilkinson trim, push-pull on the back. Again, really compelling. I think this one's $650. Again, here's a couple other guitars you guys have seen on the channel that are also less expensive. Beautiful flame top here, you know, contoured heel joint, great trim system, locking tuners, you know, the whole thing on this Court. Great guitar, again, much cheaper. And then here you've got sort of like a mid to high end Schecter, locking tuners, roasted maple neck, made in USA pickups, killer trim system, all that kind of stuff. So there is a lot out there in the price range. And of course I had to mention the Charvel. It's made in the same factory as the Player series. Roasted maple neck, locking tuners, American style string trees, lumen lay glow in the dark, dots, contoured heel joint, Fishman pickups with multiple voicings, super lightweight, ultra ergonomic, and impeccable. This thing is made beautifully. It's $50 cheaper. This one's $950, and the Player Plus is $1,000, or depending on the finish, just over $1,000. So there you go. This is another really compelling offer from Fender, or Charvel. So at the end of it all, the Fender Player Plus is a pretty great package. I think if they had done the contoured heel joint, that would have put it right over the top for me. The fact that the previous generation, the Roadhouse, had it and they took it away for the Player Plus, that doesn't sit great with me. But other than that, the features that I mentioned are really nice upgrades, really practical and really usable. So from that standpoint, it's a great upgrade. Now in terms of value, well, it's a Fender. Of course, it's not a great value. You pay $100, $150 premium, you know, to have Fender on the headstock. And as I mentioned, all these other guitars I showed you, plus many more, offer better value. So bear that in mind. But if you want a Fender, there's some really nice, practical, usable upgrades for the Player Plus. And yeah, overall, I like it. Thanks so much for watching. All the guitars and gear I mentioned in this video will be linked in the video description below. You can check it out there, along with my tab store, t-shirt store, favorite gear, all that stuff is down there. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe by clicking my face right here. Other than that, have yourself a great day. Take care.